if I can make that lag go away, but it shouldn't make a difference. So I'm going to get started. So this course is going to be an introduction to Python programming. It's meant for people that are essentially just beginners to coding, but I hope that it can also be useful for anyone that just wants to learn a bit more about Python if they're not familiar with it. And I've made an attempt to consolidate the concepts that I think are important into a curriculum. And hopefully by the end of the course, you will feel comfortable doing some basic programming and even being able to build an application. So my goal is that we end the course by working on a project where we stream live Twitter data and then do data analysis on it using packages like pandas and then doing data visualization. So I'm still trying to figure out what the most interesting thing to do would be. I'm actually leaning towards doing something that's related to epidemiology data. Because that's going to be very relevant right now. But you can actually use Twitter data for a lot of interesting trend analysis. So I think that'll be a cool thing to work towards. So we will get started. Everybody here knows me, so this seems really silly and self-aggrandizing. But I'm Chris. I'm a software developer for Amazon Kindle right now. I'm actually still, I'm still working. So everybody at Amazon is working remotely right now. So I've been away from the office for a few weeks, and I will probably be away from the office for a while. And I am, it's been a bit of a struggle. We're all trying to learn how to not work in the office and not be distracted by all the cool things around me. Anyway, so at Amazon, I've had the opportunity to work on a data science team, and I was doing machine learning and building some architecture for that machine learning, and essentially it was to make Alexa smarter. But I realized I actually didn't really enjoy machine learning as much as I thought I would. I actually found it pretty boring, and at some point, if people are interested, I can kind of give you my interpretations of the industry and the domain and like why I think that. But yeah, I just please stop me from going on tangents. I have a tendency to do that. Anybody that was in my classes knows that that's a thing I do. So before that, I was teaching at Beth DeFilla. A lot of you are actually, former students. So I'm really happy to have you here. And I taught computer science, math, physics, and economics. But then I also taught at CTY, and that's through Johns Hopkins, just a summer program. And I taught a course called Fundamentals of Computer Science for 5 summers, I believe. Programmer, used to be a teacher. So you might be wondering, why Python? Why not Java? Why not JavaScript? Why not Go? Why not any of these other languages that people talk about? You'll see a lot of people ask the question when they start programming, like, hey, what programming language should I be learning? And it's really not the right question, because you can really use most programming languages to solve whatever problem you're trying to solve. So it's not really like, it's not quite as important to pick the right language as it is to just learn the basic concepts underlying programming and learning computer science fundamentals, algorithms, problem-solving heuristics. But I chose Python because Python is a pretty easy language to learn compared to a lot of other languages. So I primarily work in Java. I also do a lot of JavaScript now. Those are actually totally different languages, even though they both have Java in them. So, but they're pretty verbose languages. Python's pretty simple. Python is also appropriate for people that are not trying to be software developers. They're not trying to build like full-scale applications. Instead, they're just trying to build something that solves a problem or just get something up and running. So a lot of the science teams that I work with work primarily in Python. So data scientists work in Python, and Python has a huge number of libraries related to data science that are super useful, and we're going to be using those. But Python was invented in 1990 by this dude Guido von Rossum. He's actually a pretty interesting guy. If you're interested in just kind of like what's going on in the industry, I would recommend like looking for interviews with him. Super really brilliant dude, and yeah, he made Python, and Python is one of the most popular languages in the world now. So this is an XKCD comic for those of you that are familiar. If you are not familiar, I would highly recommend checking out XKCD. It's a comic by Randall Munroe. He is a huge fan of Python, so there is a celebrity testimonial already. And there is kind of a joke of sometimes Python almost makes it too easy to do things, which is both a pro and a con, and we'll get more into that later. But you'll find that with Python, you can kind of just say like, hey, I want to do this, and there's already a library that's going to do it for you, which is kind of why I wanted to use Python, because I thought it would be the easiest way to get everybody up and running. So on GitHub, so just to explain, GitHub is a version control repository using the Git language. We'll be learning how to use Git on the command line. Git is what you use to just make sure that you always... So version control is used because you always want to have backups of whatever you've been working on. So if I make a game, for example, and put it up online, and I find that, oh, I want to add a new feature to it, I might add the new feature to it, but then the new feature breaks something, and then nothing works. So then I can just revert back to my old version and put that up, and then people can start playing the game again. This happens a lot, and we'll learn a lot more about Git. It's pretty much universal in programming, and most programmers I work with say that the thing they wish they had learned more of in school was Git. I've never... Every programmer says that. So a repository is essentially just where you keep your code. So we'll talk about it more later. I just wanted to kind of give you a this is supposed to be like a pretty high level overview of it. I'll do a whole lesson on Git and make sure everybody's up and running though. But if you want to start coding or contributing to open source projects or working in industry, you absolutely must learn Git. But currently, Python is the second most popular language on GitHub, which is, and it actually went down a little bit this year, but it's pretty, yeah, it's really popular. And like I said, Python has pretty simple syntax relative to other programming languages. So here's an example of two programs. One is written in Java and one is written in Python. And the only thing that these programs do is print hello world to the console or the command line. You can tell with Java there are all these lines, there's a lot of noise, public class main, public static void main string args. What does that mean? You don't have to worry about it. So that's pretty cool. In Python, you can just say print hello world. Python was meant to be just a very high level language that's a lot easier to learn with a lot less syntax. So I actually personally prefer Java, but I'll probably explain more of that. Explain why later. There are some reasons for it. So we're using PyCharm. So the first assignment that I posted was to set up your to watch YouTube videos to set up your development environment. I posted 2 YouTube videos. One was for Windows users, one's for Mac users. PyCharm is an example of an integrated development environment. So IDEs are used by programmers. They have a lot of tools. They have a lot of UI features that make it way easier to write code than if you were just using a basic text editor. And PyCharm is one of my favorites. It's produced by a company called JetBrains, who also produces IDEs for other languages. So I use IntelliJ for Java, which is another JetBrains IDE. PyCharm is specifically meant for Python. So I thought this would be a good one to use for everybody. And I just want to talk about, like, pretty much anyone can benefit from learning to program, even if you aren't trying to work as a programmer. You can work in information security. Like cybersecurity is a really important domain right now that is only going to grow in importance as the world has become as the world has become more connected digitally. It's become even more important to make sure that everything is secure, and that like everything that needs to be under lock and key is definitely under lock and key and not accessible to anybody else. Yeah, but all you can use VS Code if you want to. I don't. I personally prefer PyCharm, but like that's not going to be relevant to the course. Like whatever you want to, if you already have an IDE that you like, feel free to use that. So this course is going to cover as much as I can fit into it. So obviously this is going to be a little ad hoc. This is something I just decided to do last week, and I'm still working a full-time job. So I am, so it's we'll see how it goes. But here are the things I want to cover. Today I'm just going to cover basics, and we'll cover variables, objects, loops and conditional statements, talk about GitHub, version control, Git, using the command line. So we'll learn how to use like Linux and Bash and other scripting languages on the command line, which will help you pretty much, like it will almost definitely help you in the future. It's universally important for programmers. Functions and classes, object-oriented programming principles. I'll also try to cover like functional programming principles as well. Data structures and algorithms. I'm just going to be covering the basics of that because that's honestly a pretty dense subject. We're going to build some games because I think building simple games like tic-tac-toe or checkers is actually a really good way to learn programming. Then we'll move on to the basics of data science and statistics, so just some of the underlying mathematics, how we do the analysis and such. And then I want to build an app that utilizes the real-time Twitter data. I've done it before. I actually thought it was really cool to see like all the streaming data just come in, and then being able to do analysis on it. And I'll even talk about just kind of like different methodologies that you can use to analyze that data as it comes in, and what sort of conclusions we can draw from that data. So I'm actually pretty excited for that project. I haven't written it yet, but I have an idea of what I want it to be. So for lectures, I'm going to stream on YouTube unless I find a better alternative. So right now I'm on Wi-Fi and I have to use my work laptop, but I should have access to other equipment, and I should be able to plug in to a modem and have the connection be a little better next time. So this first lecture is totally a learning experience for me because there was a lot to set up here in addition to just like the curriculum planning. So next time I imagine that the stream quality will be a lot higher. So I'm going to record each of these streams, but also like I encourage you to also be live because it allows you to ask me questions that I can answer for everyone else. But if you can't attend a lecture, don't worry about it. Watch later. You can still complete the assignments, do it at your own pace. But it'd be cool if you watch live. I intend the lectures to last about 45 minutes to an hour, and then I'm going to give you about an hour to 90 minutes of coding time. So you're free to work on the assignments that I assign, like the homework assignments after that, and then I'll be available to help you with coding if you have questions. So it might seem like kind of, I know people don't really have a good opinion of homework assignments, but I've actually sort of grown to realize that you can't really learn programming halfway. I think it's really important to force yourself to learn the concepts as they come along. That's the only way I've learned to program. I mean, it's taken me years and years to get better at things, and I still feel like I'm actually not a great programmer. And you'll find that a lot of a lot of professional programmers share that sentiment. I work with a lot of brilliant people that all think they're terrible at programming and the truth is that usually that's because when you learn how dense the whole subject is and how much there is to learn, you understand how much you don't know. And then that's really scary that you don't know all these things, and it makes you feel like you're not particularly good at it. You might have heard of imposter syndrome. It's quite common. So I think it's really important to just dive in, be frustrated, challenge yourself, and over time you will absolutely get better at this. And some assignments are going to be coding assignments. I intend for most of the assignments to be coding assignments, actually. I will actually give you some digital worksheets as well sometimes, because there are a few things that I think are actually better using that particular interface for learning. And there are also going to be some large-scale coding projects, which will take you longer than the other coding assignments. So to contact me between classes, I intend to do lectures on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. These are completely arbitrary days. I can be fairly flexible. I intend to do Sundays at 3, but I'm happy to do 4 if that works better for everybody. I'm happy to source. I might just put up a survey to ask when people want to do lectures, because it doesn't make a huge difference to me right now. I usually work from 11 to 7 on weekdays. So any time that is not those times work for me. So I'm going to try to be available. These are my office hours, essentially. I'll try to be available on Tuesday and Thursday from 11:30 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That might change, but for now, just assume that's when I'll be available, and you can just ask me questions and such. You can also just send me individual questions at my email. Put up the email there, just replace the word @ with the @ symbol, and just use the subject line "Introduction to Programming" hyphen and then your name, so I know to actually click that email, because I don't open most of my emails anymore. So I just want to go over some here is a very basic Python program. And you might look at it and say, I have no idea what's going on. And that's totally fine. I really don't expect you to know what's going on. Any of the programs that I put up in this PowerPoint are going to be available on Google Classrooms. So I put up a link to the Google Drive, which is going to have every single piece of material that I use for this course, including this PowerPoint, and any of the program snippets that I've written, any assignments. So please look there and you will find anything that you need. So I just wanted to kind of show you what your Python programs are generally going to look like. Probably the only confusing thing that I'm going to have you ignore for now is this thing down here where it says if name is equal to main run main. That's just kind of the basic that's just a basic syntax thing in Python, but don't worry about those now. I'll explain it later. So in that code, there's a lot of sort of basic concepts related to programming: variables, assignment, arithmetic, operators, output, strings, numbers, and functions. And I'm going to go through each of those and just give you a high-level overview. And just so you know, I'm going to go into more detail in future lectures, but so today is going to be a bit of a crash course for anybody that's new to Python. And we're just going to go through a few concepts, but I'm going to go into a lot more detail of Python as a language later. I just wanted to get you up and running so that you could complete the first assignment and make sure that you're ready to do some coding. So a variable is a reference to a value or an object. And what that means is that, let's say I want to have a variable called number1 with a value of 3. I can type number1 =3. And then, sorry, I got distracted by chat. I'll answer that in 1 sec. So basically, you can read that as number1 is assigned the value of 3, or number1 gets 3. A single equal sign does not mean equality, it means assignment. So a lot of languages, instead of an equal sign, will use an arrow. And the arrow is probably more appropriate. It's just more tedious to type, so most programming languages will just use an equal sign. So basically this means that the variable number 1 holds the value of 3, the variable number 2 holds the value of 9, and then number 3 will hold the value of whatever number 1 is, plus whatever the value of number 2 is. So essentially number 3 is going to hold the value of 3 plus 9, or 12. So you would read, so you'll hear me say gets a lot, and this is what I mean. So variables can be used to perform digital logic, and variables can always be manipulated, which is, you'll find is pretty useful and pretty fundamental to programming. And I think I just repeated a slide, so ignore that. So for arithmetic in Python is performed the same way that you would perform arithmetic in the non-digital space. Now, I'm actually going to be going over arithmetic. That doesn't mean that I think all of you don't know how to do math, but it's actually a point of confusion for a lot of people, the order of operations and arithmetic. So I'm actually going to spend some time going over it. So for now, you can consider these kind of like the order of operations. You perform whatever's in parentheses first. Second, you would perform division, multiplication, and modulus. I'll explain what modulus is later. And then addition and subtraction. So operators with the same rank have the same precedence. So that means that division, multiplication, and modulus all have the same exact precedence. Now, the way it works, though, is that if you have multiple operations of the same precedence, you will perform the operation that is to the most left first. So if you've ever been on the internet, especially the sillier parts of the internet, you might have seen something that looks like this, which is, this math problem is stumping everyone. Can you solve it? And then like people will be arguing in Facebook comments. It's pretty infuriating to look at, but I always do because I have no self-control. But let's go ahead and try to solve this particular problem, which is 9 minus 3 divided by 1 divided by 3 plus 1. So first we would do the division. The division is the highest ranked operator. So this division is the leftmost operator. So 3 divided by 1 is going to be 3. So we have 9 minus 3 divided by 3 plus 1. So now we'll do 3 divided by 3, which is 1. So we have 9 minus 1 plus 1. So now we have subtraction and addition. So we'll do the leftmost subtraction. So 9 minus 1 is 8. We have 8 plus 1, which is 9. And now you can wow all your friends with your vast knowledge of arithmetic. Great job. So let's talk about the modulus operator. It's represented with a percent sign. And you can think of modulus as the remainder when one number is divided by another number. So you would say A mod B is the remainder when A is divided by B. So you might have 5 mod 3, for example. And when you divide 5 by 3, you get 1 with a remainder of 2. So if you remember, this is kind of like how you would have done division in like first grade, where you're doing long division and then like you have a remainder at the end. Modulus is getting the remainder. It might seem weird that we're getting the remainder, but this is honestly a super useful operation. I end up using it all the time for all sorts of different things. So hopefully it will seem less arbitrary in the future. So go ahead and take a second to try to figure these out. I'll just give you like 1 minute. You can use a piece of paper. You can don't yell out the answers in the chat. And then we'll just go over the answers. All right, so here are the answers. So 7 mod 2 is going to be 1, because when you divide 7 by 2, you get 3 with a remainder of 1. 9 mod 5 is 4, because 9 divided by 5 is 1 with a remainder of 4. 4 mod 2 is 0, because there is no remainder when you divide 4 by 2. 4 is evenly divisible by 2. 10 mod 7 is 3, because when you divide 10 by 7, you get 1 with a remainder of 3. And then 3 mod 9,999,999 is going to be 3, because that, I'm not going to say the number again, that number divides 3 0 times, so you'll have 3 left over. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. If that does not make sense, please let me know. Also, I know it seems silly that I'm going over arithmetic, but in my experience, this is actually something that is useful to go over for people. Honestly, hopefully it's a useful reminder for you. So, and then take a second to just do these arithmetic problems. Just get used to the order of operations. So I'll give you another minute to try to figure these out. All right, so I'll just go through these. So for the first problem, you would do 3 times 4, so 12 divided by 6 is 2, plus 9 is 11. For the second one, you have 9 mod 5, which is 4, 1 times 2, which is 2, so you have 4 plus 4 minus 2, so you do 4 plus 4, which is 8, 8 minus 2 is 6. For this one, you have 9 mod 3, which is going to be... Okay, I was wrong. The answer to that one is actually 0. My apologies. So 9 mod 3 is going to be 0, because 9 divides 3 3 times with a remainder of 0. And then 3 divides 0 no times with a remainder of 0. So, oops, see, even I need practice with arithmetic. For the fourth problem, we have 9 plus 21 in parentheses, so we're always going to... so we're going to have 9 plus 21, which is 30, divided by 3, which is 10. And then we'll have 1 times 9 here, which is 9. So we'll have 10 plus 10, which is 20, plus 2, which is 22, minus 9 is 13. Okay, so for the second one with two modulos, yeah, I can see how that one's a little confusing. But basically, like, whenever something evenly divides something else, you're always just going to get a remainder of 0, because there's going to be nothing left. So if you have two integers that are, one can divide the other, the modulus is just going to always be 0. So 9 mod 3. You have 3 dividing 9 3 times with a remainder of 0. So you have 0 mod 3 here, and then 0 mod anything is just always going to be 0. So yeah, I get how that's kind of confusing. You can also do modulus of negative numbers, and it actually works a little bit differently. Saying that modulus is only the remainder is actually... It's kind of like saying the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, where it's kind of just like a useful way to think about it. But it's mathematically, there's a much more precise definition of it. If you want to learn more about the the underlying mathematics of it, I'm happy to send you some links or talk to you about it. So in Python, output is super easy, way easier than other languages. So this particular code snippet does two things. Well, three things, I guess. So it prints out hello world first, and then I have a variable here called my name, and I assign it a value of Chris as a string. We'll be talking about data types like strings and integers another time, so that's something I just had to skip today. And I'm going to print my name is, and then if I put this comma here, and then put my name, which is if you'll notice is the variable here, then we're going to have, it's going to print my name is Chris. So let me actually pull up a coding environment here. If I can. Technology's hard. Oh, I know why. Okay. Yeah, that'll work. Let me actually make a new notebook here, because I realized I was just kind of pulling up work stuff, which I should definitely not do. Huh. The programming is kind of reacting to the OBS stream, which I'm using to integrate with YouTube live streaming, is causing some weird issues with that, so I might just have to run it later. Once again, technical difficulties, something I can work on in a bit. But just trust me when I say that the output here is going to be hello world, and then my name is ... Chris. And you're free to use that code snippet and try it out yourself. And then sometimes it can be useful to get user input. So user input would be, if we use the input function here, it's going to prompt the user in the command line for an answer. So this program is going to print, hey there. I assign some input to the variable my name. And when we pass in what's your name into input as a parameter, it's basically saying that you're on the command line, you're going to see the prompt, what's your name? And then you will be able to type. You can type your name, press enter, and then whatever you type will be assigned to the variable my name. So then at the end of the program, you're going to see hello, whatever name you put in, and then an exclamation point. So once again, you are free to try that out yourself. And then sometimes you'll actually want to parse user input. So I'd actually like you to try this yourself in a coding environment. So try something like this where you say, you can just type exactly what's there. And you'll notice what happens is that, you get the prompt, give me the first number, give me the second number, give me the third number. You'll type 1, 2, 3, and then you'll print out 1, 2, 3. But really, we might want the sum of the numbers. Like, we might want it to say 6, not 1, 2, 3. And the reason this happens is because when you use input, it defaults the data type of whatever you put into what's called a string. A string is basically just a block of text. And when you add blocks of text together, like when you use the plus sign, the plus sign actually works differently on strings than it would on numbers. On numbers, when you use the plus sign, you actually just attach the strings together, and that's called string concatenation. But when you use numbers, you will actually get 1 plus 2, which is 3, plus 3, which is 6. So I'm going to show you now how you can change this program. So something you can do is you can do type conversion. So what happens is you'll say A gets input, give me the first number. So there will be a prompt in the command line that says give me the first number. And whatever you put in will then be converted to an integer type. And an integer type Python will recognize as a number that it can perform math on. So then when you do yes, so Jess is right. Repellit is actually a really awesome site to use. Let me actually get a link to a Python environment, and then I can help anybody with setting up their development environment later. Just one sec. Yep. So if you follow the link I just put in chat, then if you don't have PyCharm completely set up, that's okay. We can work on that later. For most of the coding that we're going to be doing at first, you can just do your programming on Repellit if PyCharm is causing issues. The development environments tend to take time to learn, but they're really, really worth learning. But yeah, Repellit will do everything you need it to do, so if you want to follow along and type some code in, that's a great place to do it. It's really cool how it's set up. So like, let me see if I can just bring it up on the stream. So yeah, with Repellit, you can just type whatever you want. So like, and then it'll just run all the code for you. So yeah, I totally recommend using that if PyCharm is giving you issues. The PyCharm does have a learning curve to it, but if you want to start coding more, there's really no better way to do it, in my opinion. And other people I asked said the same thing when I was looking for recommendations for development environments currently. So I'm going to move on. So functions are a big part of programming, and you can think of functions as reusable code. Functions, you learn about functions in math as well. So like, I'm actually going to just type something here. So you might remember from math, you might have seen something like f of x is equal to 3x plus 9. And essentially what that means is that you have a function called f. It's taking in a parameter x, and then it's going to give you the output based on this operation. So in this case, f of 4 is going to be 3 times 4 plus 9, which is equal to 12 plus 9, which is equal to 21. But then if we do f of 0, we're going to get 3 times 0 plus 9, which is equal to 0 plus 9, which is equal to 9. And those are math functions, and functions in programming honestly just work pretty much the same way. X is just a variable, much in the same way that we're talking about variables in programming. So honestly, this is the easiest way for me to think about it. So hopefully that kind of illuminates things for you as well. Everything is broken. Sorry. I don't know why that's there. Go away. There we go. Oh yeah, so Wild Yitzy has joined the chat. Yitzy also knows how to program in Python, and he offered to help me assist people. So if I am not available, you are also, I believe Yitzy will be available, but I will let Yitzy define his office hours and when he is available himself. I am not going to dictate when he has to be available. So don't spam Yitzy, please. So this is how functions look in Python. So you'll have this keyword def, the name of the function, all the parameters that you will be passing into that function, and then the statements inside the function. Hey, Josh. So this is an example of a function in Python. So we have the keyword def, which indicates we're about to write a function. The name of the function, which here is get sum of 3 numbers. And then we have the parameters that we're going to pass into that function. So we have parameter number 1, number 2, number 3. And just realize these are arbitrary names. Like, these parameters can be anything you want. You could just be A, B, C if you wanted to. That'd be totally fine. And then we have a return statement here. So we're returning the sum of number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3. And I'll go over what that means in a second. So, like I said, get sum of 3 numbers is the name of the function. I just realized I'm not even doing the slideshow. I'm going to do that. There we go. Okay, so for functions, get sum of 3 numbers is the name of the function that we were just looking at. So if you want to call that function later, you would use that name. Parameters are values or references that you provide to the function for reusability. So just like functions in math, so like the x in f of x equals 3x, that's for a function f, and the variable is x. The return value would be like 3x, so it's what you get back. You can return any type of data that you want. You can also just not return at all. For example, I gave you a method. This is generally called a void method, which means that there is no return type. This method, if you call it, will just print out all the numbers from 1 to 10, and that's it. And feel free to try that yourself, play around with the numbers. And then I'm going to go over a couple more concepts before I just let you start doing a coding assignment. Conditional statements give you the ability to check a condition before executing any code. So you'll have something that looks like this. You'll have a Boolean expression, which is an expression that evaluates to either true or false. So if a Boolean expression evaluates to true, the block statement here will be executed. And then if the Boolean expression evaluates to false, the block statement will not be executed. So get used to conditionals. We're actually going to do a deep dive into Boolean expressions later this week, because there's actually a lot to learn there, and mastering Boolean expressions is really important. I actually, look at code all the time of coworkers with bad Boolean expressions that can be simplified, so I actually think it's totally worth it to take a deep dive into those. So, for example, this is just a sample program. So let's say we have a test number 5, and then we have these 2 conditional statements. We have if test number is greater than 0, we print the number and is positive. Now that I'm looking at this, the str here is actually superfluous. Your code will still run, but you don't actually need it. And then if test number is less than 0, you print this. Now you will so then you'll see 5 is positive as the output to this program. So we're also going to let's look at some comparison operators, and these are things that you can use to construct Boolean expressions. So these are the 5 that you'll probably be using the most. Actually, I'm missing a really obvious one. So 6. PowerPoint's hard. The hardest of all points. Okay, so basically you have these 6 comparison operators, and these are the ones you'll primarily be using. So this is equality. So this is basically saying x is equal to y. Or actually, you can think about it as, so think about it as x is equal to y, and that's either going to be true or false. This is saying x does not equal y, which will be true or false. X is greater than y, x is less than y, x is greater than or equal to y, x is less than or equal to y. So you will be using them to construct. And so think of these, they're always going to be evaluating to true or false. So just take a second to look at these and try to figure out whether these are going to... So you have 6 Boolean expressions. Think about whether they would evaluate to true or false. And I'll give you just a tiny bit of time to think about that. Okay, so 6 is equal to 6 will evaluate to true. 1 does not equal 4 will evaluate to true. Oh my god, sorry. Do I even remember how to do this? Let's find it. Okay, the rest of them are good. So 1 does not equal 4 is true because 1 does not in fact equal 4. 7 is less than 8 is true. 7 is less than -6 is false. 3 is less than or equal to 5 is true. 7 is greater than or equal to 7 is true. And then in Python, we're going to be using, well, actually, this is just for all Boolean expressions. Boolean algebra is actually its own field of study. But in Python, they're represented with 3 logical operators. So we have and, or, and not. So let's say we have the code snippet here, which is going to be n mod 2 is equal to 0, or n mod 3 is equal to 0. That's going to be true if either of the conditions are true. So this is basically this whole Boolean expression right here. This is one big one right here that will evaluate to true or false. It evaluates to true if n is either divisible by 2 or 3. And if the number is not divisible by 2 or 3, then we're going to get false. So for example, 2, if n is equal to 2, this expression is going to return true. In fact, any even number, any multiple of 2 or 3 will return true, but 7 will return false because 7 mod 2 is 1, and then 7 mod 3 is 1. So neither of those are equal to 0, so the whole expression is going to return false. If that's confusing to you, that's okay, because Boolean algebra is actually sort of confusing. That's why I'm going to do a deep dive into this later. This first lecture is just meant to get you just started up and running so you can write a little bit of code. And then we have the not operator. So not will negate a Boolean expression. I actually don't like how I typed that. So a lot of this was done at like 3 o'clock a.m. last night, so next time I will try to be a bit more prepared. So 1 sec, sorry. So this is going to return true, and it's going to return true because we have 3 is equal to 3 here, which is going to evaluate to true itself. So I'll actually just go through. We can actually evaluate these expressions algebraically. So we have not, okay, I can't, not, there we go. Not true or not false, because 3 is equal to 3 is true. 3 is equal to 4 is false. So we have not true or not false. And all not does is it negates the operator, so it inverts it. I'm sorry, it negates the value. So not true is false. Not false is true. So not true, we have false or true, which will evaluate to true. Confusing? Maybe, but we'll work on it a bit more later. And then here are just a couple Boolean expressions. So if we have 3 is equal to 3 and 9 is less than 5, that's going to be false, because even though this is true, that's false. And for an AND operator, to have two expressions evaluate to true with AND, you have to have both of the expressions be true. But if we say 3 is equal to 3 or 9 is less than 5, we only need one of these expressions to be true. So since 3 is equal to 3 is actually true, the whole expression evaluates to true. And then we have not 3 is equal to 3. So 3 is equal to 3 evaluates to true, and we know that not true will evaluate to false. And then I realized that there's actually one more thing I want to go over. So I'm just going to put in a quick slide here, and I will upload the updated PowerPoint to the classroom. So I didn't cover if-else statements, and that might actually be something that you need to finish the assignment. So you can have an if statement that looks like this. Like you can say if, let's say, we'll say n equals 5. Actually, here, easier. Let me do this. Just bring Sublime Text up here. Save it as example.py. I do not have permission to save there, apparently. Let me save somewhere else. All right. So let's say, for example, I just get some user input. So I can say my number, which is the variable name, it gets input, please provide a number. And then I can say something like my number gets int my number, because if you remember when we use input, it automatically takes in the value as a string. So we'll use int to convert that string into a number. And then we can say something like this. We can say if my number is greater than 0, print your number is positive. Else, if my number is less than 0, print your number is negative. Else, print your number is 0. So this would actually be a functional program. So I can actually pull up that Repel-It. All right, so I made a slight mistake. I'm more used to coding in Java, so I typed else if, but same thing here. So let's see if we can get, yep, there we go. All right, so in this program, first what it does is it prints out if-else statements, and then we get some user input here. So we say my number, which is a variable, is assigned the value of whatever you provide to it. Sorry. And then we convert that input into an integer. So we use these if statements. So we say if my number is greater than 0, print your number is positive. So the way these work is with an if, else if, and an else. First, we look at the if statement. If this evaluates to true, we do whatever's in here, and then we're done. But let's say we enter a different number. So let's say we enter something like negative 88. So what's going to happen is this Boolean expression will be evaluated. So you'll say if negative 88 is greater than 0, do this. Negative 88 is not greater than 0, so we go to the else if statement. If my number is less than 0, you print your number is negative, which is what we got here. Sweet. And then just to make just for completion's sake, we'll go ahead and run the program, enter 0, and your number is 0. So that's something I forgot to include in the let me just take a screenshot real quick, and I'll just put it in the PowerPoint so that anybody that wants to look can look at it. Cool. So that's what I want to go over today. I don't want to bombard you with a lot of stuff. So for a lot of this, we're actually going to be going into a lot more detail later. So things like data types, conditional statements, loops, Boolean expressions. We're going to be doing a much larger deep dive into that later. But this should be enough to get you up and running and finish the first coding assignment. So the first coding assignment, it's uploaded onto the classrooms page. So I'm actually just going to pull it up for everybody. Somebody already turned in the assignment. Great work, Betzalel. So, sorry, technical difficulties. Oh, oops. So Betzalel was certainly successful in completing the assignment, but it looks like you actually edited the master file, which is not. Sorry for the call out. Just if you. Okay, I'll have to figure this out. One sec. Give me one sec. So let me just put up the assignment again. It's not a big deal. Okay, and let me just make sure that this one is just viewable for now. Cool. All right, so yeah, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So if you go to that link right there, then you'll have the coding assignment. So just copy that, and then I'll show you what it looks like. You can actually just try using Repel It for now, because honestly it might take a bit too much time to go over PyCharm stuff today. So I'm glad Jess called out the Repel It as an option, because it's really, really good. That's not what I wanted. Okay, so this is your first coding assignment, and I filled in most of it for you, so you don't have to change anything in main. All you have to do is write these functions. So essentially what you want to do is you want to finish off get minimum, get maximum, get median, and then get difference of max and min. And one of the tricky things is that for this method, get difference of max and min, you will actually have to use the functions up here, get minimum and get maximum, in your answer here. But using everything from the presentation today, you should actually be able to write functions that make this work. And then if you run this program, the idea is that the minimum of these numbers should be 3, max is 7, median is 5, and the difference between the max and min is not 2, it's 4. So you can, so try filling those in now. Also feel free to ask me questions. I'm just going to kind of be, casually chatting and answering questions for anybody that has them. You can either send, if you think your question would be good for the group, please say it in the chat. Otherwise, you can also just direct message me. So yeah, I did explain the difference. So basically what Yitzi is saying is the difference between the single equal sign and the two equal signs. The two equal signs next to each other is the equality operator. It's a Boolean operation. And then the one equal sign is the assignment operator, which is basically taking a value and assigning it to another variable. So if I left the print statements on the same line, would the program still be functional? Yeah, it should be. I don't think that should make a difference. One thing that we're going to talk about with Python is that Python is actually pretty whitespace intensive. So like, it's really important that you indent as you're supposed to. I'm going to go over more of that later, though. Best place to message me would probably just be, I'll say this, since you guys are cool and you're here for the first class, you can feel free to like just DM me on Facebook. You can send me an email. I have my email in the PowerPoint. It's just use a subject line with introduction to Python programming in it, because I'll actually open it, because about 90% of my emails are basically ignored now. So I will actually answer yours though. So, but yeah, as long as the class is small, you can feel free to just like DM me on like whatever service you would usually DM me on. If more people start showing up to the live lectures, then I might ask it to be a bit more systematic, just so I don't go nuts answering like 20 messages an hour. Yeah, don't worry though. You guys are cool though. So, feel free to DM me. And then as you're working on it, please just, once you have your code and it's up and running, save the file something.py or whatever, and just upload it in Google Classrooms. So if you actually do want to take the challenge of doing the Windows subsystem for Linux, I've just recently, so most of my work is done on Mac OS. So there's kind of just like the immediate Linux integration. But Linux on Windows is actually a lot more usable than I thought it would be. So I'll be going over how to do that on Windows. So if you want to take the challenge of doing that, I would actually recommend it. But Python 3 for Windows is just going to be a lot easier if you just want to get something up and running. But I've grown to really enjoy Linux command line, so I totally recommend that if you're into it. right, so I think I'll end the live stream here. I can. So this should be available online. If not, I am recording it on OBS, so I can upload the lecture. I know a lot of people couldn't come today, so because this was kind of just like an arbitrary time, so that's totally cool. Okay, yeah. So you're not understanding what you're trying to do with the code. So the end game should be, if you look here, where you see like print, get minimum, get maximum, get median, get difference. You should essentially see on the command line when you run this program 3, 7, 5, 4. So like right now, let's say I just I'll just put some kind of filler stuff here. So I'll say return 0, return 0, return 0. So now if I run this program, I'm just going to get, I ostensibly will get 4 zeros. Yep. So the idea is that you want this to run and perform logic so that when you get the minimum of 3 numbers, the minimum is being returned of those numbers. It doesn't have, you can change the numbers 3, 5, and 7. I just put those there so that it's easier to follow. Get maximum will return the maximum of those 3 numbers. Get median returns the one in the middle. And then get difference of max and min returns the largest number minus the smallest number in that group. So the idea is that instead of 4 zeros here, like I have now, it should be 3, 7, 5, 4. So that's the end game here. So yeah, anyway, it was cool to do a stream, like a live stream. So I'll be doing this again on Tuesday, and like I said, I'll be recording the videos. This has been a total learning experience for me. There are a couple of things that I noticed that I want to fix, so I can totally work those out. But yeah, thank you for joining me. I hope it was helpful, and I hope to see everybody again on Tuesday. And try to finish this assignment and upload, and I will give you feedback as soon as I can, because I'm not up to much either. I'm just inside, much like everybody else is. Anyway, have a great day, everyone. Please message me if you have any questions, and stay inside, have fun, do some coding. So expect to see me Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'll put the tentative schedule here. So Tuesday and Thursday will be 8 p.m. to like 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when I'll be available. And depending on what I can do with my work schedule, I could also move those around, because I'd rather just be accommodating to people that want to join the session live, because given the nature of my work, I can kind of just do it when I want to. So I'm happy to just move stuff around if another time would be more appropriate for people. So anyway, yeah, thanks for joining, and I will see you on Tuesday.